Hello and welcome to the Baseball Wisconsin podcast. I'm your host, Tim Gotzler. All right, so this episode, the seventh inning of Game 7, okay? And it's going to take us in a whole different direction, actually to a whole different state. We're taking down to Oklahoma. And what's in Oklahoma? Oklahoma is a high school coach named Jonathan Gelnar. And he's a teacher, he's a high school coach like many of us. But what got me interested and connected with Jonathan is he hosts a podcast as well. Okay, it's the Ahead of the Curve podcast with Jonathan Gelnar. And I'm going to be very honest with you. Like during this episode and getting this set up, like this is a guy I look up to a tremendous amount. When I started this 5 years ago, I really looked to him, and I was just a listener. I never met the guy. We would message on Twitter about a variety of things. I'd hear something on his episode, and I'm talking like he's got 300 something episodes at this moment. He's putting out content like crazy, and he's got everybody. He's got pro guys, college guys, high school guys. I feel like his reach is all over the country. So throughout the years, I'd message him on some just podcast stuff. How did you get started? Because he'd tell his story. He's a high school teacher. He's a baseball coach. I'm like, well, that's just me in Wisconsin. And then I'd listen to his episodes, and I'd ask him about this or this. And we just formed a relationship because of social media. And one day I'm like, hey, you want to come on this show? He's like, sure. Lined up a time, got it going. Of course, we had some tech difficulties because that's how it would happen, right? And what's his connection to Wisconsin? Well, his dad played for the Brewers, if that's any connection. But no, honestly, most importantly, the episode's fantastic. Jonathan's a phenomenal high school coach. But it's the lasting effect of this episode is I hope to connect you, the listener, with his podcast. Ahead of the Curve with Jonathan Gelnar. So, without further ado, Jonathan Gelnar. All right, we're live. Jonathan, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Tim?
Fantastic, man. Hey, for our listeners, just give us a background. Where'd you start? Where'd you grow up? Tell us about your journey through baseball.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very small town in southwest Oklahoma called Hobart. I got the baseball itch, I guess you could say, from my dad. He played parts of 8 seasons in professional baseball, and I think 6 on and off in the big leagues. And getting to talk with him and getting like to hear all of like the clubhouse stories and all the different things, you just kind of, it's one of those that's like really surreal moments. And to me, he was always just dad. But like you start to see, like I think I heard a stat the other day that there's 23,000 ever Major League Baseball players, and you could fit them in like half of a stadium. It's crazy. So I wouldn't say there was a lot of pressure with that growing up because this was before the internet age, and unless you knew word of mouth. But he was always very good as a dad, which is kind of what I strive to be. Especially as a coach with my kids, he was always like in the left field line, like he would never yell at games, and he always just kind of wanted me to pursue my own journey. But played football, and actually may have been a better football player than baseball, but I really loved baseball. And then for me, the transition to college was kind of hard, going from like a very small town and then playing collegiate baseball. Like that's a very hard transition. For a lot of people, it was for me. And then I didn't really want to know what I wanted to do. So I remember, so post playing career, I hadn't finished my degree. And I remember walking into the office to like make schedules, and I was like, I don't even know where this place is. Like I'm at, in Edmond at University of Central Oklahoma. And she was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I have no idea. I've never enrolled myself before. I've always had it like enrolled for me. And she was like, well, what do you obviously like baseball, and would you be interested in teaching? And I was like, not really, but okay, we'll just kind of see how this is. So I enrolled in a biology class because I was like, well, science seems like a really cool thing. And being from a small town and really not paid that much attention in high school, I lasted for about 3 days. And then I was like, okay, well, what else can I do? So I became a history major, and I was like, well, at least I can study dates and figure that part out. But I kid you not, like I was in a lab, and I was like, one of those moments is you're like, this is not just uncomfortable. I am not supposed to be here, like at all. So I was like, I love the science teachers, and I'm like, this is way, way over my head. It seems really interesting, but it was just one of those moments. It's like, yeah, I've just no shot. So I've been teaching and coaching ever since. I've been blessed to do it at different levels. My first year, I got to be a GA at a Division II school, and then I decided that was not for me. College is hard, so I really respect a lot of people that are going through that. And it was like 10. I remember talking to the head coach, and he was like, "Yeah, I make like 45,000 a year," and he's like 40 years old, and he's like, "I just got to this point." I was like, "Man, that's a lot." So I could make that almost my first year teaching. So I decided to go into teaching, and I've been very blessed. Been very blessed with a lot of good head coaches to work under. My first year, I got to work under a Hall of Fame football coach, and we ran the wishbone. And I remember him getting on to me that I had like the fullback, which is like the most important guy. He was having me coaching those guys like under his like this was his baby, and so it was like one of the first things we did, and I didn't know anything really about it. And I had him 3.5 yards, and he needed him like exactly at 3, and so he taught me a really good amount of attention to detail management. I work under 2 Hall of Fame coaches at Union High School, baseball and football, who were really great. At Owasso High School, the winningest head coach in Oklahoma baseball history, has over 1,300 wins now. And then one of our assistant ADs at Claremore was a national Hall of Fame coach and national coach of the year. So a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about, I've stolen. I lean on a lot of different people, and so I've been very blessed to be around a lot of different people, and that's influenced me greatly.
Well, that's the thing is, I mean, you talk about like the coaches you've been surrounded by, guys you played for, your dad, like, going into that profession, going into that passion, you had such a great, guys to look up to. And then this is before the podcast even starts. So, like, before we get to that, like, we're from Wisconsin, we have a lot of limitations. Like, us the listeners are into the really tight schedule. Like, what does high school baseball in Oklahoma look like? Kind of give us that 12-month overview. How much contact do you guys have? And then we'll dig into the school you're at.
Yeah, so we time, but it used to be whenever I started, it was like if you're enrolled in a class, you can keep them as long as you want. And so Oklahoma is pretty unique. Um, Here we can have them for the class period all fall, so like all of August through November 30th. We can have them for an hour. So like it's a baseball class in Oklahoma. We actually have a weightlifting class too, which has been a phenomenal thing for us. We just started that this year. And so starting December 1st, you can have them for unlimited amount of time. And that's, for me, that's like a good, because the weather is so bad here. So December is actually better than January, so we can actually get them out and we can long toss with them. But play sport kids here. So we have about half of our guys to, November, and then we get the other, 2/3, and then we'll have a couple of wrestlers this year and have a couple of basketball players. So we really don't have a transition for them, which is unfortunate. So we start March 1st, we start games, and then it's just a rebound a little bit. This is February, so we start scrimmages. We get 2 weeks of scrimmages for about starting on February 15th, and then we start games on March 1st. So basketball season will run into March here if you're playing for a long period of time, and so will like wrestling state. And so I like that is one thing that I wish they would fix a little bit, just to give those guys a little bit of a breathing room and get arms healthy, and or at least have them playing catch, because that's a lot for those guys. But baseball is kind of a unique state in that way. And we also have, I don't know if you knew this, we have schools here. We have a fall state, so they play baseball like, and small meaning like you're graduating with like 50, 60 kids. They don't have enough to play football, so they elected, I don't know how many years ago, to do like a fall state championship where they play like August, September, and then they're really done, middle of October, and they play for like state titles. So they get, baseball season, basketball season, usually for those guys, baseball season, and then summer ball. So there's a lot of really good baseball players that come out of that because they play so many games. So they get an extra 30 games a year doing that stuff, which is kind of unique. I think we're the only state that does that.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. That's so interesting. But like I said, you've grown up there. Like this is old hat to
Right.
you, and you've been able to, you went through it, and now you're coaching through it. Tell us more about the school you're at right now. How long you been there? Give us an enrollment size. Digging a little bit. I know you guys are in the second highest classification. So maybe start there. Tell us more about the school you're at.
Yeah, we're about 1,200 ish kids. So I don't know how if that's large or small compared to to Milwaukee schools, but yeah, we're in 5A, which is the largest classification here is 6A, and 6A has several schools that are like 5,000 kids, a couple of them. So 6A, very large spread. 5A goes from 1,200 to about 800 kids, 32%. But I think when you ask me this question, like what's unique, what's something about it? So our mascot is the zebras with red stripes. And so like it's a very unique thing. I think there's like two or three. There's actually one other one in the country, and I think there's only two or three programs that are the zebras. But I was like, that was the first thing, like the first one of the first things that I asked when I got there. I was like, what's the story? It's like cattle, buffalo. What's the deal with the zebras? And so they said in the '60s they ordered new football uniforms, and they were like the Hornets or something. And so they ordered new football uniforms, and they came in and they were like horizontal pinstripes with red, like white with red pinstripes. And so the small town stuff, it's like, oh, they look like zebras, like red stripes. And so for whatever reason it stuck. So not only zebras, we are zebras with red stripes. So that's kind of one of the first things that people are like, oh, that's kind of weird. So it's unique, which I can absolutely appreciate some uniqueness about that. But we can get into more specifics if you'd like to. What would you like to talk about as far as the program goes?
Yeah, I kind of want to start the fall with your hour baseball class. Like when you talk, like kind of walk us through the school year. Again, since now you have a weightlifting separate class for that, I'm guessing over time that's evolved. I'm sure you use that time to weight train, and so maybe start with that hour. Are they in your classroom? What does that look like? All right, so I'm intrigued to hear more about baseball class in the fall. 1 hour. How do you spend that hour most efficiently?
So, yeah. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier, we do have a weightlifting class, and so that is going to be dispersed throughout the day, like whenever the kids can get it in. So a lot of our kids will be like concurrent enrollment, or we have like a work release class that kids can go like job shadow and do some different things like that. So just whenever their schedule allows them to be able to do it, and then the last hour of the day is always athletics. So it will be, for every school or for every sport on campus besides junior high, which we do have a junior high program. It will be last hour. So mainly so I coached before this was a thing, and then we were trying to figure out. So the main reason that they started this was like arm health. They wanted to, keep guys from abusing arms, which was kind of interesting to me since we do have fall baseball as a state championship thing, but that's neither here nor there. But so they limited to everybody to an hour, and that was the off season. And so trying to figure out what can you do. So it's from like the start where they when the start of the class starts, you get 1 hour. So it's like, okay. So biggest thing was cutting down on transitions. So I remember the first year we did it, and this is whenever I was at Union with Coach Newkirk about 10 years ago. We were like trying to do offense and defense, and then there'd always be like 10 minutes in between. And so really just trying to figure it. So it's like 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Okay, that's 50 minutes. That's almost an entire class period that we're like transitioning from one to the other. So what we've done now is we've almost just staggered it. So we've gone either, and for hitting, it's really hard to do hitting in like 30 minutes and do a really good job of it. Like you're trying to balance activity and achievement. So what we'll do now is we'll either pick one or the other, and we'll just flip flop days. So we'll outfielders and catchers are on offense on Monday, and then infielders you're playing catch, you're doing all kinds of your defensive work, and just trying to be more in depth than move around. And one of the things we did add to that is a circuit. So one of the things that I've done lately that I've really liked is when we're inside, and I know a lot of the northern guys who are much better coaches than me are probably going to be like, oh yeah, we do that all the time. But it's like instead of like doing one thing whenever we're inside, we do several different things. That's like, okay, now we still may have a minute transition, but it's like we're going to go cages, then we're going to go do arm care, then we're going to play catch for 10 minutes, and then that way it kind of hits on everything if that's a route that you're wanting to take. So we just figured out like if August is the furthest away we can have basically in practice from our start date, then we really want to focus on like building skills. And then the closer that we get, we want to focus more on like competitiveness and like how do we win with what we've got. So like August and September, we call it block one. That'll be more of our like skill building phase, like your bat speed. We're trying to gain a bunch of weight, um, the right way, not just get fat. But we're really trying to like focus on the skills and like level up what they need to work on. And then the closer we get to competition, so like December 1st hits, it's more of like, okay, pitch design, it's holding runners, it's how do we quick to the plate, and then trying to figure out how to like pitch shape on machines or like go live, especially because we have a couple of staff members who pitched in college baseball, which helps. But how do we do that? So it's more of like, you know, trying to balance how many reps we're getting versus the quality of reps as well. Because like I said, the further you are away and the more time that you have, the more you can focus on like the skills and really teaching it. And the closer you get to it, it's really hard to do that stuff. So how do we use what you've got, your strengths and weaknesses versus what the guy on the mound, his strengths and weaknesses are, and then going over more like game planning and things like that. So we just try to be really efficient. But I think a lot of people, from what I've noticed and from what that I've done in the past, we take for granted that dynamic warm up. That could be an area that a lot of coaches, just like myself, kind of take for granted, and we just kind of do the same thing every day rather than really utilizing it. And then how they play catch, because one of the things we say a lot is if you can't play catch, you can't play. So we really focus on making sure like we have some sort of intent, whether that's, hey, we're trying to massage long toss today, we're trying to do headshots today, we're trying to we do an athletic throwing program where it's basically like they're moving different directions and just trying to get them to be able to play catch from different and multiple arm angles. So I don't know if that answers your question about the hour, but it's just not being able to see like what people have. But we do have an indoor, we do have a baseball field, we do have a couple of cages in center field. So just going through that, and then I think the biggest point for me was how do we limit the amount of transitions that we have in in the time that we have, because it's so limited, because then over time that's going to create a cumulative effect that you're losing versus somebody else who's more efficient is going to be gaining that time back. And that's one of the things we try and do.
All right. So now, like, how many kids are we talking here? Like, what size? What size is the group?
So right now, I think we have 32. So at like I mentioned, during football season, we'll have I think we had around 20. And whenever we get everybody out there, we'll have between 38 and 40. And so what we did now, which is, we're in season now, we do try and split up into several different groups doing several different things. And I can get more in depth with that if you want me to as well. Yeah. So one of the things, I do have a good staff. Like we have 4 on high school. We have a junior high coach who's the head junior high coach. He comes and helps out. We hired a lay coach this year, which is somebody who just helps out when they can. And then we have a volunteer assistant who was a former player for us last year. So this is like my first year that we've had enough to where I can just like oversee everything, which has been really nice. And I would highly suggest that if you can do that, then do that. But that allows them to all coach different areas. One of the things that we did that was really interesting this year was we're all there at the same time, but they're all doing different things. So kind of taking that same circuit effect. So like tomorrow, we're going to have live ABs with our JV pitchers. And so just kind of looking at it from the perspective of, okay, how do I not limit standing around? How do I make sure that our younger guys are developing? How do I get them field time? Because like I said, we only have one field. And not just, hey, go hit in the cages on your own. So what we're doing tomorrow, just as an example, we're going to start with like varsity base running. The JV guys are going to do armbands and dynamic and long toss to get prepared for the guys who are throwing. And then while those guys are throwing, we're going to do base running. Whenever those guys are going to transition to the field, then our varsity guys are going to do bands, arm carry, and go hit in the cages. So that allows our JV group to be able to have the field, which is, it's, I don't know a better way to do it, but we do need to get our varsity guys ready for games without sacrificing the development of the JV guys. So they're going to go through like pregame routines, and then we're going to go live ABs with those guys, and then transition the JV guys back to the cages. But another thing we've started to do is do like two different groups of of hitters. So let's say like BP, we schedule everything around BP. Kids love it, and we do different things with them. But we'll have about 4 or 5 different groups, and with 4 or 5 different tasks. So you just basically you follow your number. So let's say you're in my group, you're in my group, Tim, and we start in the cages. So then we go cages. We can either go bunt station, and then we could go, we hit live on the field, and then we can either do defense or base running or both, right? Well, then in sequence with that, to be able to give JV guys some time, well, they're going to go like cages twice, and then they're going to go on field and then do base running at a different base, and then they're either going to shag or do some maybe bunt station down the line. So just say like you got to know where you're going, but there's a ton of stuff that's going on, and that way, I just hate standing around. Like I hate watching guys just stand around, and I know there's a lot of different things that you can do, but like I said, you're trying to utilize the space that you've got with keeping the groups, to about 4 kids a group and not spending a ton of time just rotating between different stations that aren't going to make them better. So those are just some of the things that we've tried lately just to get our guys to develop our young guys, but to get our older guys the game needed reps that they're going to need to be able to compete in a couple weeks.
All right, so this is great. I think coaches, especially who are listening to podcasts, trying to get better, they're thinking about how to maximize time, be efficient, practice things that happen most often, right? Like those practice planning tips. So as you're putting that together, like you said, I picture a well-oiled machine, pistons firing, moving through transitions. Like, what is your process? When do you start practice planning? Is it, is it Google Doc? Is it throughout the day? Do you set the skeleton, send it out to your coaches? Like, what does that look like for you on a practice planning basis?
Well, it depends on the time of year. And so if we're talking about now, yes, all of those things, it does take a long time. And my biggest rants of any time that I get onto the kids, it's lack of communication and lack of effort. Because one of my biggest gripes, and it just wears me out, is like when a kid no tech, no calls, no shows, and I have him doing a specific thing that's really important to the team, but then I don't know that he's there. So those guys usually get the brunt end of it, but our guys usually do a really good job. I can't gripe about our kids about that too much, but it does happen, and it just wears me out because I'm like, guys, I spend probably 2 hours every single day on practice plans. And so when we're in the fall, it's me and then one of our coaches, our pitching coaches junior high softball. And so he's able to come over whenever they're not playing, but it's mostly just me, so that then it looks different. And then we get some of the football varsity softball guys in about November, hopefully December, if they're playing for a long period of time. And so then it just starts to add to the amount of things that we can do. But I do allow a lot of the older kids, like I talk to them a lot, especially early on, about why these things are important, like the ins and outs of it. They've been there for several years, and just being able to like coach the younger guys and invest in those guys. And now that we're split, now the younger guys should be able to rely on some of those older guys, and at least now we have a system that we've got in place to where they at least know. Because one of the other things that you want to be able to, and what I try and do as much as I can, is we're trying to create routines without it being boring. So like we want them to understand what we're trying to do on a daily basis, but we don't want to do the same thing every single day, because then they're going to get bored. They're going to turn their minds off. So how can we make sure that they know where they're going, they know what they're doing, there's not a million questions asked, but we tweak it to where it's something different every day. So like our BP is probably different every day. Like our live ABs will set up different situations to where, we'll have runners on, or like one of the things that we did last week that I really liked was we started every inning with a situation that they had to win. And you've got one shot to either the offense either wins or the defense wins, and you get a run for that. So you can do first and third, and then you got one shot to get it, and then you reset, and then you just play the inning live. So it may add, 2 or 3 pitches to the inning, but it gives them a situation to where we don't necessarily have to work on team defense that day. We set it up to where they're doing it live and there's pressure on them. But yeah, as far as practice planning goes, it is something that I really enjoy. It does take a lot of time. And, with the weather here, it kind of sucks. There's a lot of days that I do have to plan on too, because it might be raining or it might be too cold, or it just changes all the time, or the field might be too wet, even though, I think that it might not be. but I do include the coaches early, and I just kind of give them an outline of what I want, and then within their small groups, like individual defense or kind of the scope of team defense, I'll take basically practice plan design, and then BP because I'm the offensive guy, and then what we want for team D, and then they've got the rest of the stuff. So like guys in the cages, I'll just say, hey, like work with the guys, make them better. And so that I'm trying to. We have a lot of young guys. Last year, I took a lot of it on because they were brand new to the program. They didn't know necessarily what I wanted. How do we coach our guys? And so this year, I'm trying to give back some of that. I need to do a better job, but giving back some of those, like some autonomy to some of those guys because they are good guys and they are good coaches. But sometimes, with younger guys, you just want to make sure that they understand like exactly what you want, so then they can go out and they can execute.
All right, so we spent most of the time here talking, drill and skill and, block one and then, getting like simple to complex and working into competition, getting ready for, where you guys are at in the season here in February. But what are some off the field stuff you guys do? I mean, again, you're in the building, you're in the classroom, you got these guys throughout the year. What other things do you guys do off the field to help kind of ingrain in your culture?
Yeah, you sent me over the question list, and I actually I think the question was like, what is something unique that you guys do? And I sent it, I asked for help for our staff, and I was like, and the only question I got, or the response I got was, that's kind of, because we're all in such our small bubbles. Like we don't really know what everybody else is doing, and we're just kind of head down and trying to figure that part out. But I was like, okay, well, let's just talk about the off the field stuff. So one of the things we do, because you guys know fall baseball, I know it's a blessing that we get to be able to do that. And I know the coaches, I have friends in Chicago and some of the northern states, and I'm like, you guys are way better than me because I would be stressing out if I didn't have a couple months to get ready. But it does it can drag on at times. So one of the things that we did in our off season, and we installed a point system. So we call it Zebra Tough, and we just give points for like everything. So like volunteer opportunities, who's showing up for extra work, and who's winning these different competitions. Who's got, you get points for A's and points for B's and then nothing for C's. Like you're just trying to figure out a way to keep it competitive. And then I like post it every week with the different teams and their captains. So I give each, either senior or junior, somebody who played varsity baseball last year who needs to step into a leadership role. They get their own team, which is about 4 kids, and they're in charge of communicating with them. They're in charge of making sure they're where they're supposed to be and talking to them about how they do things right. Like if you show up late, it's minus points, or if you no call, no text, it's minus points. And so we're really just trying to make it as competitive as we can. I think that the players really like that. And then, we do a couple different, tough competitions throughout the year. So last year we have a fire station right across the street from our field. So one of the days I just went over there and asked, I was like, hey, can you run our guys through the ringer? And they're like, absolutely. So actually that was 2 years ago. And then last year we have a Navy junior ROTC who does training during the day. So we trained with them earlier in the year. And then I called the firefighters again. I was like, hey, can you guys take us through it again? And I swear, like the worst part of what they did was the warm up. They said the warm up was just because they've got vests on, like they've got helmets on, like they've got all this different stuff on. And so we showed up, and one of the guys, I mean, some of them are, former military. And I was like, hey, I'm just letting you know, like these guys said the Navy junior ROTC thing was way harder than what you guys took them through last year. And the only response I got, and this guy's like 5'7", yoked up dude with like a buzz cut, and he just goes, okay. So there was a couple of guys throwing up, but it was a good time. The kids love it. Like it's one of those things that like they keep asking to do it again because we talk about toughness as a skill and being able to push through adversity, and they love it. So we do have a competition for that. Then the individual winner gets a plaque, and the plaque he gets to keep. But then there's one that goes in our locker room. And then the team gets a poster that we post in our locker room as well. So we started doing that the last couple of years, and that's been really good. So that's our off-season stuff that's kind of unique. As far as inside, like now, one of the things that this is a small town. It's about 23,000 people. We do have a university, but it is a one high school town. So one of the things that I talked about in my interview process was how do we get the community involved? And it is a baseball town. Our field was built in 1947. So there's a lot of upkeep, but it does have a ton of like, it's got the big grandstands, it's got like the rock wall, like it's a really neat field. But how do we, with the busyness that is, that everybody has, like how do we attract people to the baseball field? So, and create basically stakeholders with, parents and community members, and how do we get more people involved and wanting to come to our games? So we do celebrate a lot, and we have different celebrations. So we do a military game. We do, every senior gets to pick a teacher to throw out a first pitch of a game, like somebody who impacted them, and they come out and they throw it to them, they sign their ball and they give it to them. That one's usually a tearjerker. There's usually tears at that. We do a youth league night where they get to come run the bases, and that was been really good. And so we're just trying to like use some of those, and then add some different stuff every year. We involved the band one year, so they had like the drum line playing right behind the dugout for a little while, like during the game, which was awesome. We had a trumpet player last year. For senior night this year, one of our kids plays guitar, so he's going to play the national anthem on guitar during senior night. We had a guy who was on The Voice, one of the finalists for The Voice, so he's going to come out, and just trying to involve as many people as we can. And for me, it's like, what if this is a distraction versus what? Because it's a lot on me, it's a lot on our booster club to try and create all of these different things. But these are the things that the kids talk about. They're like, oh, remember when we had, the guy from the military that came who had a Purple Heart and he talked to us, and like these are the things that they remember about all of these different things. And last year we had the guy who took over for me or the guy who I took over had moved towns, and he had been diagnosed with cancer in his eye. And so for about a year and a half he was fighting that, and he passed away last fall. So most of our 2 or 3 members of our staff had played for him. And so it was like a big deal, like a very tough moment. And so I was like, okay, so how do we celebrate him? So one of the things we did this year is we're going to have a night for him. And so I didn't know him very well. I knew a lot of our coaches were very close to him. I was like, how do we make sure that his memory and his family, because he still has one of his sons is a junior at our high school. So how do we make sure they don't feel left out? And so I called his wife and I said, hey, I would love to be able to do like a remembrance game. And you guys come out and you have your sons here. Two of his 3 sons will graduate from Claremore. You guys come out and throw out a first pitch. And she was like, okay, like that would be great. We would love to be able to do that. What date did you have in mind? And so I called his former school, which he had just, like I said, he just passed away in the school that he went to, and we're going to play them that night. And I was like, well, if you can make it, we're trying to do March 13th. And she immediately just broke into tears. And I was like, oh man, what's wrong? What's going on? And she said, March 13th is our anniversary. And she was like, this is the first one that I'd ever celebrate without him. And so I had a hard time not like breaking down too, but I was like, oh my gosh, like, so these are like the moments that we're just trying to create. We talk a lot about like, and that's not me. Like for me, that's a God thing for sure. Like, but with the stuff that's like this, like how do we create more people that want to be a part of it? How do we create more community involvement with that stuff? And then once the game starts, we're still trying to kick their ass, but yeah, we're trying to create as many celebrations as we can. So I've got a couple other ones, but I feel like I'm rambling on.
No, I'll tell you what, though. I mean, I'll be looking at the weather in Claremont. I'll be looking at the weather in Oklahoma on March 13th and hoping you don't get rain that day. I mean, that is an unbelievable, like the synchronicity of a moment. Good on you and your staff for making time and space for that. And I'm just so excited for you and your staff and your community and for his family and everyone else to have that. That's just incredible. But man, like it just got me thinking about like how we got connected was through your podcast. Like I've listened to so many of your episodes. I listened to you talk and I'm like, we have about 1,300 kids at our school. We're one high school town. We got about 35,000 kids in our community, our people in our community. Like and I'm a social studies teacher as well. Like it's just all making more sense. But I gotta love to know how you got started on the podcast, and then maybe in that talk about some ideas that you've stolen and things you've worked into your own program.
Sure. No, I got started basically because Jeremy Sheetinger. So podcasts were kind of a new thing whenever I got started, which is crazy to think now. But I think I was spending a lot of time in the car. I was living in Dallas, and I was driving like 10 miles, which equals like 40 minutes in Dallas. And I rolled through like all the ABCA podcasts, and there were some other like coaching ones, but there wasn't a ton of them out there that were like, okay, how do I steal this stuff? And so I contacted Sheets, and he kind of sent me down the right path to be able to just reach out to people. And there were just so many people that were very open to that at the time. And that's basically it. Because if it hadn't been for him, and then I spent a lot of time on YouTube trying to figure out, okay, what programs do I use? How do I edit this stuff? Like what kind of microphone? And Ryan Hawk was another one that I reached out to, and he does one. It's called the Learning Leader Podcast, and he was like, "Hey, like this is all the things that you need." I was like, "Okay," like, and so we just kind of started interviewing people, and I do it now basically just to create friendships, and I still steal stuff quite a bit, and but now it's really neat to be able to like go to the ABCA and like know so many people just because they have given me the opportunity to pick their brain and to share it out with basically the rest of the country and a lot of parts of the world, which is really cool.
All right. Again, as you're telling the story, I used to listen to ABCA podcasts, and I'd listen to Sheets interview everybody, and then who we'd tag on Twitter, and then I'd follow them, and then I'd follow them, and then all of a sudden, like your name would pop up. I feel like I was like a 5 years behind you doing this, and then I started reaching out to you on Twitter of how I should do this, as well as going onto YouTube. And it's just amazing to me, the baseball community, because we do this in Wisconsin. It's part of our state association. I mean, I look at what Sheets was doing for the ABCA. This is what I'm doing for the WBCA. And just watching like the episodes go through, and I got to ask you, like, how do you keep up? I mean, this is like every week. I know you're a baseball junkie, but like, kind of how do you feed that beast? How do you keep the fire going for all these episodes?
It's kind of hard because there's been a lot of moments that I've been like, oh, I don't even know why I'm doing this anymore. Like, especially editing stuff, it kind of sucks. And then it's like for wherever, I don't know if you know that, well, you do know this, but most of the listeners, it's like for every hour that you put out, there's probably an hour or more of just getting all of it done. Because then it's like, now you got to record an intro, and then you've got to add the music, and then you've got to add the outro, and then you got to upload it, and then you got to do the show. It's just stuff that grunt work that I would have to pay somebody way too much money to be able to do that stuff. So I just kind of do it on my own. But now it's just like, just trying to find some time to be efficient with it. And like, if you'll know now, like I've done the same interviews, but I've cut them up into the parts of the season. And then next summer, I'm going to do like a best of series and go through like our most listened to episodes, and then just kind of put those out there, just because like you said, it's 350. So there's a lot of them that people probably don't go back 5 years and listen to all of them. So it's kind of hard, but when you have those moments of like people reaching out, people reaching out, and then you have like, or somebody sends you a text like, hey, that was a great one. Like any of those moments of encouragement are always like really, because half the time I'm like, I don't even know who listens to these anymore. I like have this voice of doubt in my head. I'm like, I don't even know why I'm doing this anymore. Like legitimately, like the next day I'll have a text and be like, hey, I just started listening to this and it's awesome. Or, hey, I really love that last one. So if you are listening and you love Tim's podcast, make sure you reach out to him and tell him thank you, because it does take a lot of work to be able to do it. But once you get out of it for a little while, then you're like, now I got to get the itch to get back in and start interviewing some people. For me, it's almost like I feel left out or feel left behind. So I don't want to ever feel like that.
Well, and I feel like as I listen to your episodes, like it's like recommendations of recommendations of recommendations. Like one coach leads to another coach, because obviously like your network has just grown and grown. Is that accurate? Am I seeing that correctly?
Oh, absolutely. Now people aren't as active on Twitter. That was a big thing whenever we started. And so I could just reach out to like people putting out content. And then it started developing like, okay, now it's, I don't want to say look at me type stuff or like, hey, bring in lessons type stuff. But a lot of the people that I was reaching out to now in professional baseball or they're in college baseball, and we're busy, we don't post as much stuff, and you've moved on to different things. But yeah, it's coaches knowing other coaches, and then like one of your questions was like, you know, how did this lead to, you continuing to do that? And I wrote down just some names that I text this week that just asking for advice from the podcast. And I had a couple of them that that are local friends, but it's like I reached out to Tom Marker, who lives in Ohio, Matt Denny, who lives in Arizona. I reached out to Barry Rose, who we played against in Frisco, Texas, and then Josh Wheeler, who's a small school coach, and like Steve Roof, who's in Kentucky, and then like Pete Savage, who's in Reno, and asking them about different things and different aspects of the program. I would never be able to do any, a lot of the stuff that I do, I have stolen, but just how do I do it with my program? That's where we get those texts back and forth. Like, hey, I've got these limitations, like my weather's not as good, or I don't have as much time for practice, or we play 5 days a week and you play 2 days. Like these are different things and conversations that I think are awesome with the coaching community.
Oh, absolutely. And as many episodes as you do, like, and you talk about going to the ABCA and you have this network, like how else do you scratch your professional development itch? Like what else are you working on? Obviously your season's up and going. You talk about middle of the month, you have scrimmages by March 1st, you're starting games. Like what are you working on right now, or what did this off season look like for you personally as far as development?
Well, this is going to sound really boring, but I think I'm trying to do less but better. And so I used to like read a book a week, and I just now I'm getting to the point where it's like a lot of the books that I read are like they're kind of regurgitated information, stuff that I've heard before. So how much am I actually getting out of it? But the ABCA is awesome. Going to your local conventions is awesome. Just reaching out to other people is the best thing for me right now. But it depends on your stage of learning. Like I told you earlier, we have some young coaches who are in like 5 years or less and they're learning. I'm like, watch every single one of these ABCA videos that you could possibly watch, like every single one of them. You never know where you're going to end up. And now for me, it's like, okay, now I specifically search for different stuff. So I went to the ABCA today and watched 2 videos on strategy. And one of them was like first and third offense, and the other one was first and third defense from like 2008 and 2009. So really getting more specific into what I'm looking towards versus the amount of information that I'm trying to take in. So I would say early in your career, get to as many conventions as you can. I've been to most of the large ones. I've been able to speak at a couple, which has been awesome. And then just being able like get in as much information as you possibly can, and just don't ask questions, just write down everything, be very organized and keep good notes. And then the older that you get, or like the more seasoned that you get, try and really, like for me, it's like, how do I do what I want to do? And then just add layers to it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you some of the quick hitters you ask on your episode. I mean, I gotta do it. I feel like this is the chance. So, all right, give us a drill, indoor drill, outdoor drill that your players love, that we can steal from you.
So this is funny actually. So I sent a text to all of our seniors and I asked them. I said, "What's your favorite drill?" And I waited till practice. And I was like, "Okay, like, what do you guys think?" And I'm like, I don't know. And so they weren't helpful at all. So I was like, "Okay, so like, what about like clutch up BP?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I like that one." So like clutch up BP is one of the things we do that they really like. Most of our BP stuff they get really excited about because there's points and we track it. And so outdoor clutch up BP, I stole this from Matt Denny, and it's essentially you get points under pressure for hits that you get. So like for us, it's you get 8 minutes. You got usually 3 guys in your group, and it's rapid fire. The defense is making plays like they're playing everything live without throws. But the offense, you get one pitch and it's either a ball or you're trying to barrel it up. So the point system works as if you get one ball through the infield, then it's 1 point. Or if you get a ball through the infield, like it hits grass, dirt, grass, you get 1 point. So the infielders are trying to keep it on the infield because if you dive and you knock it down, they have to get out. You get 2 points for grass first. You get 3 points for if you put it in the gap, and you get 4 points for a ball off the wall, to the wall, or off the wall, and then you get 5 for a home run. So if you score points, you get to keep going. So it's almost like the home run derby that we all see in the All-Star break. It's like it's very rapid fire. So you have to balance that with like being really tired, with like taking a breath, and with the quality of it. But there's usually a lot of trash talking going on with that, and so they really like that one. And then the defense is like very heightened because they know that they're trying to win. There's usually something on the line, either like field work or burpees or, just something that it could be very small, but just something that's on the line. And then at the end of the day, you announce the winner, and they usually know because they're always like, hey, how many points did we get? Hey, how many points did I get? And so one of the things we added to that was the top points winner gets to pick a coach to do his job for field work for the day. And so, like, it's kind of a funny thing because we're usually the ones directing them to do different stuff, and they get like, "Hey, Coach Gelnar, you go rake the mound today." I'm like, okay, well, you better freaking win tomorrow then, because we're going to double it up. But anyway, so that's probably their favorite one on a field. Off the field, inside, I I don't know, like, it's just trying to keep things fresh. So we'll do like on our indoor, we have enough space for about 2 cages, and then we have a little bit of a turf area to like do ground balls, or they have enough space where we could probably throw like 2 pins off of the side. So that's kind of what we're working with. But their absolute favorite is we have, like I said, 4 different coaches who pitched in college. So the coaches versus players live AB day is absolutely their favorite. So I don't know if that's necessarily a drill, but the amount of trash talking that goes on throughout the week just for Fridays whenever we do that stuff, it's insane. It's to the point where I'm just like, guys, shut, like, I'm so tired of listening to this but it's fun. And then we have actually one whose little brother is a senior. And so like, it is talked about a lot, but that's not necessarily a drill, but it's something that they do look forward to every single week. And it's inside, and it's cold, and it's all of the things. So like anytime we can turn anything into a competition like that, we try to.
All right, so I'm picturing this right now, like, and you, head guy, the old guy on the staff, I mean, like, you get all these young whippersnappers who can still get on the bump and reach back and throw it like they do in their men's leagues, and then you have to decide fair, foul, double play, gapper. Like, tell me you have a hit tracks or something, or is it just because now you're going to start wearing it if there's that much trash talk?
No, it's definitely, we don't have a hit tracks. No, there's definitely a lot of sword motions whenever that stuff happens. Or like the other day, one of our seniors missed on a changeup and fell to a knee, and one of our coaches goes, "Are you proposing to me?" And he just, like, the whole place just lost it. So like, and it's all good and fun. We all hug it out at the end of the day, but it just, like I said, it's like, I even had a coach like on Wednesdays, like, "Hey, is my start day on Friday again, like last week?" So he's like, "I just got to prepare for this," and it's like, so he's like doing plyo balls like the day before, and they're doing on Saturday when we had practice, they're doing like post throwing recovery stuff and talking about having to go to the trainer, and but it's a good time for sure. But no, I wish we had a hit tracks. That'd be awesome.
Well, I tell you what, I mean, I think having young guys on staff, again, there's pros and cons, right? I mean, you're dealing with some of the cons, I mean, but I think having that competition piece, guys that are willing to go through it, compete, again, in the cage, right? Again, us Wisconsin guys, we're always inside. So it's either a cage bomb or a home run, or it's a fly out. Depends if a pitching guy says it's a fly out, offensive guy says it's a bomb. Ball on the ground is either a base hit through or it's a double play. Like, it's just amazing who you talk to. But I love that. And I think the more that we as coaches can be connected with our players in the competition space is awesome. So I think that's probably a great thing to steal if a staff has got a group of young guys, especially that can jump on the mound for you. Hey, one of my last questions for you is, like, what is something you've learned recently that makes you a better coach? Like, what have you picked up this offseason as you start to simplify? Is there something you started to focus more on?
Yeah. So like I said, my first year here, I retained the entirety of the staff that was here, and they were really good guys. But by the time that it rolled around the next season, one of them became the head softball coach. Another one got into like throwing with track. He was in the Highland Games and like would throw, like, I don't even, like, you compete in a kilt and you like throw hay, and so he wanted to get into track so he could have more time. Another one took a job somewhere else. So like everybody but one left, and thankfully I had some, like I said, younger guys who were hungry and they wanted to get involved, and they bought into the the tradition of the program, and thankfully they trusted me enough to take jobs here. And so like that first year it's hard, because then you have me as my first year head coach, and then everybody leaves, and then you have another group that comes in, and so trying to learn them to learn the program. And so this is a year that I could actually like trust them to be able to control everything that's going on. And because at the end of the day, as head coaches, like it's in our hands. And so giving them enough to where they feel hungry and they've earned it. And so that's one of the things that I've learned is I want to try and give out as much as I can to those guys because there's some future head coaches that we did hire. And then the other thing that we've done, I don't know if I've learned it, but it's something that we've implemented and you've seen it around. It's hero, highlight, and hardship. And so we started to do that over the last 2 weeks, and coaches started it. And you basically give, like, you take a couple minutes at the end of practice, like, takes 5 minutes or less. But a coach, I started it. I said, who's your hero? And so, I talked about my dad. I gave a highlight of like getting married and having our kids and just the amount that goes into. And then I talked about a hardship. So whenever I was 16, I had a car accident, and the girl that I was dating at the moment, whenever we were driving and we rolled 6 times and she passed away. And so like sharing that with a group of guys was very hard for me. But within like the last week, I've had several parents that have reached out to me like that's one of the most impactful things that you guys have done, like showing who you are. And then with me, even like I thought I knew our coaching staff really well, and they've talked about some of the things. And there's always there's tears, either me or like somebody else on staff. Like every time somebody shares some of that stuff, it's like it's a very authentic moment that guys are not very vulnerable. And especially like sports guys, you want to be alpha dogs and you want to compete all the time. But I feel like that has been an awesome addition to the different things that we've been doing lately. And I would highly recommend everybody to do that. We're actually starting players next week. So we're going to start, and we're just doing it in numerical order at the end of practice. And they're just kind of sharing a little bit about themselves. And it's been really neat.
Well, I mean, you hit it right on the head. The authenticity, the vulnerability, and starting with the adults and the staff who are supposed to have everything figured out, supposed to be these alpha males. I think it just sets the tone for the program, sets the tone for the kids. It gives them a window to do it themselves with no judgment. I think that's really, really powerful. So thanks for sharing that. Last question for you, right? Brian Kane, $1 million question. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you started coaching? And this is where I cut off my mic and you roll us into the outro.
I love this question. And thank you for sending these to Tim, by the way. And thank you for doing this podcast. Thank you for inviting me on and letting me share a little bit. Hopefully your listeners have taken some stuff away. But I wrote down 4 things. The first one is just be present. Like I know there's coaches that are listening that have been in their job for 20 years. And then there's probably some young guys who are consistently looking for what's next. And I'll just say like, be present with where you are. And I heard that early and I was like, okay, like, what does that even mean? It's just like the kids that we're around every single day, you owe them your best. And if you're consistently looking for what's next, or you're trying to plan out what's next, that you're taking away from their experience, and it's not fair. And I feel like I had fallen into that at some points in my job. The second one is marriage is the second most important decision of your life. For me, the first one is giving your life to Christ, but the person that you marry, especially as a coach, it's got to be the right one, or it's just not going to work. My wife is she's everything to me, and she is absolutely 100% an awesome coach's wife and mother as well, because it's very hard to be able to do that. And if you're having trouble with your marriage and it's going to run over. And just for me, being able to leave my stuff at work and just be present whenever I'm at home as well. Which is the third point is don't let your kids get the rest of you. And so one of the best pieces of advice that I got, and I know you said 1, but I'm going to give you 4, because I've got you hostage on the mic. So I worked for a Hall of Fame coach at Union High School. His name was Kirk Frederick, and he was, won many, many state championships, and it's a nationally wide program. And he had this sign on his light switch that said, "Now your most important job begins," while it was turning it off. And so he talked about like when, and he actually had it on his light switch and on his door clicker or his garage door clicker whenever he would click on it, he would see it. So now your most important job begins, because as much as I love being a coach, and as much as I love being a teacher, and as much as I love being around the guys who we're basically with more than we are with our kids, our most important job is our kids. And, not having kids early on in my career and then having them, it's like, now I understand why people say that, because it's the most important job of our lives. And then the third one, or the fourth one, which goes back into the podcast, I think people overestimate what they can learn in a day, and, cramming and trying to learn and just understanding that. But with the compound effect, I think that we underestimate what we can learn in 10 years. And so I've been doing my podcast for about, I don't know, since 2017. So do the math on that, but it's close. And I can just tell you, like being a learner, and whether that's a podcast or books or just going to different coaching communities, I would never have guessed where my life would be, and the different adventures it's been on, and the different people that I've been able to meet, if I didn't have all of these different things. And I've been blessed. God has blessed me with lots of different things. But in summation, be present, know and trust your marriage, pour into it every day. Don't let the kids get the rest of you, and be a learner. And that's the best advice that I can give any of you guys today.
And there it is. Huge thank yous out to Jonathan Gelnar for sitting down with us today. This episode was recorded a few months back, but for a variety of reasons, I waited till now. Some really cool things are doing inside their community. In the state of Oklahoma right now, they are making their way towards the postseason. And, us in the state of Wisconsin here, we're just getting out of Easter break and kind of that next phase of our season. But like I said, the lasting impact of this episode is Ahead of the Curve podcast by Jonathan Gelnar. Right? When you're driving in cars, when you're on bus trips, when you just need something to be talking and thinking baseball outside of your own team, turn the episodes on. The guy's an absolute stud, and I just want to say a huge thank you to him, and have a great rest of your day.